The sheriff was found dead on my living room floor. My gun beside his body, my fingerprints everywhere. In a town that had known me my whole life, it took less than 10 minutes for them to decide I was the killer. The night Sheriff Hale was murdered, the town of Briar Hollow smelled like rain and rot. I remember that clearly because the scent clung to my clothes when they pulled me out of my car and shoved me against the hood, my cheek pressed to cold metal, my hands cuffed behind my back. Red and blue lights smeared across the wet pavement like spilled paint, and someone kept shouting my name as if saying it louder would turn back time. I had lived in Briar Hollow my entire life. 34 years of quiet routines and careful habits, and in less than 10 minutes I became the woman who killed the sheriff. They found him in my living room. That fact alone sealed my fate before anyone bothered to ask how a high school English teacher with no criminal record, no violent history, and a tendency to cry during sad commercials could overpower a man built like an oak tree. Sheriff Thomas Hale had a bullet in his chest and my gun on the floor beside him. The gun was registered to me. The fingerprints were mine. My neighbors stood outside whispering, their faces pale and hungry all at once, like people who had just discovered a new kind of entertainment. I kept saying I hadn't done it. I kept saying I didn't even know he was coming over. My words floated uselessly in the air, too light to matter. The thing about small towns is that everyone thinks they know you. They think familiarity equals truth. Briar Hollow had watched me grow up, watched me bury my parents, watched me go to college and come back because someone had to take care of the old house. They decided, collectively and quickly, that they had missed something ugly inside me all along. Interrogation room at the station smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. Detective Mark Benson sat across from me, his jaw tight, his eyes avoiding mine. We'd gone to prom together. He'd kissed me once behind the gym and apologized immediately after, as if affection were a mistake. Now he wouldn't meet my gaze. "Just tell me why, Lily," he said quietly. "Help me understand." I wanted to laugh, or scream, or slam my head against the table until everything went black. I didn't do it. I said again, my voice sounded smaller than I felt, "Someone came into my house. Someone killed him and left. And used your gun." I don't know how they got it. He slid a photo across the table. Sheriff Hale on my rug, eyes open, mouth slack, blood soaking into the fibers I had vacuumed that morning. I looked away too late. We found no signs of forced entry. Mark said, no broken locks. No shattered windows. Then they had a key, I said, or he did. That made him look at me again, really look at me. Why would the sheriff have a key to your house, Lily? I didn't have an answer that wouldn't make things worse. Sheriff Hale had been investigating something, that much I knew. In a town like Briar Hollow, investigations didn't involve serial killers or drug cartels. They involved missing money, quiet threats, things people pretended not to see. A week before his death, he'd come to my classroom after hours, standing awkwardly between the desks, his hat in his hands. "You ever feel like this town is lying to itself?" He'd asked. I told him I felt that way every day. Now he was dead, and I was the lie everyone agreed on. They let me go after 12 hours, not because they believed me, but because they didn't have enough yet. The evidence would come, they said. It always did. Walking back into my house felt like stepping into someone else's nightmare. The bloodstain had been cut out of the rug, leaving a pale square like a scar. The air still felt wrong, heavy, watched. I didn't sleep. Every sound made my heart race. I kept seeing his body when I closed my eyes, kept hearing the certainty in Mark's voice when he said my name like a verdict. By morning, the town had already convicted me. Someone spray painted murderer on my mailbox. The school board put me on indefinite leave. Parents pulled their kids away from me in the grocery store as if violence were contagious. I knew one thing with terrifying clarity: if I didn't find the truth, no one else would. Sheriff Hale's last words echoed in my mind. This town is lying to itself. I started where he'd left off. Breaking into the sheriff's office after dark wasn't part of my original life plan, but desperation rearranges priorities. Mark's spare key was still under the fake rock by his porch. He'd always been careless that way. I slipped inside, my pulse hammering, and headed straight for Hale's desk. Most of his files were boring: noise complaints, property disputes. Then I found the folder with no label. Inside were financial records, handwritten notes, copies of emails, names I recognized immediately, council members, business owners, people who smiled at me on Main Street. Hale had been tracking money siphoned from a redevelopment fund meant to revive the old mill, hundreds of thousands of dollars gone, and someone had been threatening him to stop. At the bottom of the pile was my name, not as a suspect, as leverage. A note in Hale's handwriting said, "If anything happens to me, look at who benefits from Lily Carter taking the fall." My hands shook so badly I had to sit down. I wasn't random. I was chosen. The killer knew my routine, knew where I kept my gun, knew Hale would come to my house if he thought I was in danger, knew the town would believe the worst of me faster than they'd believe the truth about themselves. I copied everything and put it back exactly as I'd found it. On my way out, I nearly ran into someone coming in. Evan Pierce froze when he saw me. Evan, the quiet accountant who volunteered at the food bank. Evan, who'd testified at church about honesty and community. Evan, who was on the redevelopment committee. Lily. He said, too quickly, "What are you doing here?" I smiled, slow and careful. "I could ask you the same thing." He watched me like a trapped animal watches an opening. That's when I knew. The pieces fell into place over the next 2 days, each one heavier than the last. Evan had access to the funds. Evan had the technical knowledge to move money without raising alarms. Evan had been one of the people Hale trusted, which meant Hale's investigation had threatened to expose him, and Evan had a reason to frame me. Years ago, before anyone noticed him, before he learned how to disappear in plain sight, I'd testified against his brother in a domestic violence case. His brother went to prison. Evan had thanked me publicly for doing the right thing. I'd believed him. Grudges grow quietly in small towns. I took the evidence to Mark. He listened in silence, his face changing with every page. "Why didn't you come sooner?" he asked finally. "Because you didn't want to hear it." I said, "You still don't." But he did. Or maybe he finally saw that believing me was the only way to live with himself. They arrested Evan Pierce 3 hours later. He confessed when confronted with the records, the threats, the note Hale had left behind like a final act of defiance. He'd killed the sheriff when Hale refused to back down. He'd used my gun because he wanted the town to destroy me for him. The trial was quick. The apology from Briar Hollow was not. People still watch me differently. Trust, once broken, doesn't snap back into place. But the truth is out there now, heavy and undeniable. Sometimes I stand in my living room and look at the pale square where the rug was cut away. It will never fully disappear, neither will what happened here, but I'm still standing, and in a town built on lies that might be the most dangerous thing of all. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.